Welcome to Whiskey Cast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1125 for September 7th, 2025. This week I'm on the road in Bardstown, Kentucky for the annual Kentucky Bourbon Festival. Coming up in a few minutes...
Age is not an indicator of quality. It gives context and dimension, but older does not mean better. I like to think about it like I think of people. You probably know some people that are quite old, but that are quite immature.
That's Maker's Mark Master Distiller Dr. Blake Layfield, just one of the many distillers and blenders I talked with over the past 3 days. We'll have highlights from the festival coming up on Whiskey Cast in depth. I'll also have the What I'm Tasting This Week department, Behind the Label, and much more. The news is next on this week's Whiskey Cast from the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. Crafted with time, shaped by nature, perfected by generations. From Yamazaki to Hibiki to Hakushu, every drop of House of Suntory whiskey is a reflection of where it comes from. House of Suntory, this is Japanese whiskey.
Enjoy responsibly. Suntory Whiskey Single Malt and Blended Japanese Whiskey. 43% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2025 Suntory Global Spirits Import Company, Chicago, Illinois.
Hey, it's Gabriel from Dewar's Whiskey. Here's a quick tip. Whenever you're pouring great whiskey, especially something like Dewar's 12-year, don't overthink it. All you need is a few glasses and a couple of people worth sharing it with. The rest takes care of itself. Back in a bit.
Let's get started with the week's news. It's brought to you by the Dalmore. Heaven Hill dedicated its new Heaven Hill Springs Distillery here in Bardstown on Thursday. The $200 million distillery brings Heaven Hill's distilling back to Bardstown for the first time since the 1996 fire that destroyed the original old Heaven Hill Springs Distillery. Heaven Hill co-president Kate Latz calls it a dream come true for her entire family.
You know, my family, my grandfather started Heaven Hill with his 4 brothers 90 years ago right here in Bardstown, Kentucky. And this is our true home place. And we had that devastating fire in 1996 and have been producing our award-winning bourbon in Layfield, Kentucky, which is an amazing facility at the Bernheim facility ever since. But to now have this facility in addition to Bernheim is truly a dream come true and something that my grandfather and his brothers and our master distiller Parker Beam and his father, who was part of that original legacy, would be so proud about.
The bourbon industry is going through some rough times these last couple of months. Are you worried at all that this may be overbuilding?
As I was just saying, we are investing here for the next 90 years. Heaven Hill's been at this for 90 years, and Heaven Hill's not going anywhere. The bourbon industry's not going anywhere. We are alive and well, and there's so many consumers continuing to explore new types of bourbon whiskey, new types of rye whiskey. Case in point, when we look at the lines at our visitor center and people who are joining whiskey clubs, we're just getting going. Here in the United States and, of course, around the world, there's so much opportunity to continue to have this amazing category thrive for many generations ahead.
The new distillery started production earlier this year and has been slowly ramping up its output. It has an annual capacity of 150,000 gallons of spirit, and planned future expansion will bring that to 450,000 gallons. Suntory Holdings CEO Takeshi Ninami has resigned following a scandal over possibly illegal supplement use. Japanese TV reports that police believe the supplements may have contained THC, which is illegal in Japan. Ninami acknowledged using CBD supplements to fight jet lag and resigned to spare the company any shame. We should note that the House of Suntory is a sponsor of Whiskey Cast. In other news, Ontario Premier Doug Ford is blasting Diageo's decision to close its Crown Royal bottling plant in Amherstburg, Ontario, and move most Crown Royal bottling to its U.S. plants. Ford dumped a bottle of Crown Royal in front of the plant this week in protest and hinted that he may use the Liquor Control Board of Ontario stores to punish Diageo for the move. The LCBO is the world's largest buyer of alcoholic beverages and is already boycotting American whiskeys in the trade war over tariffs. The union representing workers at the Crown Royal plant is demanding more transparency from Diageo over the closing. The company has not said which U.S. plants will be used to bottle Crown Royal, but insists that Crown Bound for the Canadian market will continue to be bottled at its Valleyfield, Quebec facility. Meanwhile, a tongue-in-cheek Blame Canada whiskey is making the rounds in the United States. It's produced by Dave Schmier's Proof and Wood Ventures, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary this weekend in Bardstown.
So you guys actually bottled Blame Canada before all the troubles started, right?
Yeah, it was a 22-year-old rye whiskey, and the tongue-in-cheek was Blame Canada because you're going to not want to stop drinking this. It's so good. And little nod to South Park and whatnot. We bottled it last year, and kind of under the radar, and all of a sudden people started noticing it as if it's some kind of political statement about our friends up north in Canada. It was all done in jest, in friendship. We love our Canadian whiskey and our Canadian friends.
And you had trouble getting it into Canada, right?
Well, it's not sold in Canada, and we sent a bottle to a friend of ours who does reviews online. And currently it's been stopped at the border with a lot of questions from customs.
You going to bottle another batch of it?
That depends on whether I sell the first batch.
How's business going for you so far?
We've had a great run. Proof and Wood turned 10 years old today. Clearly it's one of the most challenging years in the whiskey business, but we're here for the long run, and we've got a lot of great new projects on the horizon.
I have a sample of Schmier's Blame Canada at home, and I'll have my tasting notes for it soon at whiskycast.com. The new Potter Jane Distillery made its public debut this weekend in Bardstown. The $50 million distillery came online this spring. It's a collaboration between former Maker's Mark Master Distiller Denny Potter and former Maker's Mark Director of Innovation Jane Bowie. I talked with Denny about the issues in starting up a new distillery these days.
Market's going pretty well. You know, we fired up in March after a year of design and about a year and a half of construction. We're doing about 100 barrels a day. We got a team of 20 people, and that includes Jane and I. But no, it's going well. Like, we just, nose to the grindstone right now. All the equipment's running well, so it's pretty much been turned over to us from the contractors. So, no, we can't complain about anything.
Are you worried at all about the future of bourbon?
Not worried about the future of bourbon. I think, obviously, we're seeing some really crazy things this year and previous years. And, I think bourbon's not going away. The objective is you just got to stay nimble. You got to listen to the consumer. You can't ignore that, and you got to be smart about what you're doing. And honestly, not get too over your skis with, what you're planning to do in the future. It's all about cash management at this point.
And you guys are managing the cash as best you can?
We are. I mean, it's, when we fired up, we kind of knew, what we were up against. But, whether we're seeing what's happening in the industry now or whether it's the way it was 4 or 5 years ago, as a startup, you have to manage cash. On a $50 million project, and then you're spending an additional $25,000 to $30,000 a day just in OpEx. If you don't have a plan to manage cash up front, you're not going to last very long. So for us, it's just sticking to that plan, right? We're planning to wait until we have juice that's at least 4 years old. We want our flagship to be 7 or 8. We haven't ruled out sourcing at this point. So if we do things like that, then that's just additional, cash we can have coming in. But it's also a way to stay relevant and play around with liquid a little bit, which Jane loves that. So, yeah.
How's the relationship between you and Jane going?
It's good. I mean, it's honestly kind of the same as it was when we first met in 2007 at Maker's Mark. I think both of us had always had a dream to go do our own distillery. I don't know that I'd ever thought about partnering up, and I don't think she had either. So, when I went back to Maker's Mark, and, my experience is mainly on the ops side, and then hers is on blending and innovation. So it was kind of a natural fit from just an experience and a skill set standpoint. I think the thing that we underestimated or didn't appreciate at the time that we're good at is conflict. But it's like healthy conflict. So we're able to we have our own opinions, but we're also able to talk about it. Sometimes we get a little bit heated with each other, but it's never personal. We always end up in a better place, and we both respect the other's opinion, which, if you look at all the great teams that are out there, that's what you want. I feel like we have that. So it works out well, and it's awfully nice to have a partner to go through all this with because it's not easy.
Potter Jane brought some of its new make to the Bourbon Festival, and it's some of the best new make I've ever tasted. The plans are to release Potter Jane's first bourbon in 4 years from now. White & Mackay CEO Brian Donaghy has announced his plans to retire at the end of the year after 12 years in the role. Chief Financial Officer Michael Sloan has been tapped as his successor. In other news, Glenmorangie is spicing things up with its latest limited edition release. The latest edition in its A Tale of series is A Tale of Spices and uses Moroccan red wine casks made from French oak, along with a combination of red wine STR casks, new charred oak, and PX sherry casks. It'll carry a recommended retail price of $92 a bottle in the U.S. Football season is kicking off, and Ireland's Teeling Whiskey Company is out with its second annual Notre Dame Special Edition. It's Teeling's flagship small batch whiskey dressed up in Notre Dame's colors and will be available while supplies last for $35 a bottle. Meanwhile, Baltimore's Sagamore Spirit has teamed up with the NFL's Baltimore Ravens for a new whiskey, commemorating the 25th anniversary of the team's first Super Bowl victory. Festivus Maximus comes from Sagamore Spirit's own Maryland rye stock and will be available exclusively in Maryland. Yellowstone's Stephen Beam is pouring a special edition of Yellowstone this weekend, celebrating the 10th anniversary of its limited edition collection. It's a 10-year-old blend of bourbons distilled at Limestone Branch in Kentucky and Ross and Squibb Distillery in Indiana. It's available at $100 a bottle. And finally, tickets will be available starting this week for Buffalo Trace's October tasting tour of 4 U.S. cities. The Buffalo Trace Distillery on tour promotion will visit St. Louis, Kansas City, Jacksonville, and Tampa between October 3rd and the 22nd. Each stop will feature free tastings of the Buffalo Trace portfolio. You can keep up with the latest whiskey news all week long at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. The news is brought to you by the Dalmore.
Hello, Richard Patterson here, Master Distiller, Master Blender for the Dalmore. Whenever the team and I are in the world sharing our exceptional single malt, we like to keep in touch with Mark Gillespie and the latest news from WhiskyCast.
Let's check the calendar of events and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. The Whiskey Exchange is hosting Joel Harrison for a tasting and book signing for his new book, The Whiskey World Tour, coming up this week at its Great Portland Street shop in London. Maltstock is this coming weekend in Nijmegen, the Netherlands, and the Whiskey Show Adelaide is this Saturday in Adelaide, Australia. Tickets are still available for the American Whiskey Blending Session with Barrel Craft Spirits at the Whiskey Exchange's London Bridge shop on the 18th, and Whiskey Live Paris is coming up the weekend of September 27th through the 29th. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendars at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. Japanese whiskey began with Shinjiro Tori's vision to reflect the true nature and spirit of Japan. The House of Suntory was founded on these principles, guided by generations of craftsmanship that have transformed time, nature, and precision into something greater than the sum of its parts. Pure waters from the mountains of Hakushu, Mizunara oak shaped by decades of patience, a blending philosophy rooted in harmony. These aren't just techniques, they're a way of thinking, a quiet pursuit of balance and depth. From Yamazaki to Hakushu to Hibiki, every whiskey is a reflection of where it comes from and the hands that shape it. House of Suntory, the founding house of Japanese whiskey.
Enjoy responsibly. Suntory Whiskey Single Malt and Blended Japanese Whiskey. 43% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2025 Suntory Global Spirits Import Company, Chicago, Illinois.
WhiskyCast In Depth is brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey. Western Kentucky's Jackson Purchase Distillery made its debut here at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival in Bardstown this weekend. The distillery has been flying under the radar for the last several years under the guidance of Master Distiller Craig Beam. who will be inducted into the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame in a couple of weeks from now.
You kind of disappeared off the horizon for a couple of years. What have you been doing at Jackson Purchase?
Well, I've been trying to we got the distillery up and running, overseeing getting that up and going, working with Terry Ballard, and we got it up and running. We took it over in May 2021, and we got it up and running and made our first barrel whiskey in August of 2021, and we haven't looked back since. And when we took over the little distillery only would make 25 barrels a day. Well, right out the gate, we expanded on that, and by December 2021, we had got it up to 50 barrels a day. And we didn't go out and shop for customers. We had customers knocking on our door. Word of mouth got around that me and Terry were at Jackson Purchase, and so we realized then we couldn't meet the demand, so then we built another new distillery right beside the smaller one, and put in 3 mash cookers, put in a 36-inch column steel, all copper, and we put in 10 20,000-gallon fermenters, and we built a new boiler room, put in 2 600 horsepower boilers, and then we built on to our cistern room. So hadn't looked back since. We had been running 7 days a week, making 240 barrels a day. Never shut down in 2024 at all.
And you finally just got around to releasing your first 4-year-old bourbon, right?
We finally got around releasing that. At 2 years old, we pulled some samples. We were really surprised about the color at 2 years old. And then we kept watching it. Last year, all the trade shows, we took 3-year-old samples out. That was 122, 125 proof, and just let people come up and taste them, and everybody was really surprised about the color at 3 years old and how smooth it was even at high proof. So I thought, well, maybe we ought to release it at 4 years old. I kept thinking 5, but then I saw the color and the reaction of everybody, and so anyway, we decided, hey, I think we can get by with 4 years old, releasing at 4 years old. So about 2 weeks ago, we released our first brand at 4 years old.
You guys have been selling a lot of barrels on the investment market too, right?
Yes. Yes.
Are barrels good investments?
I think they are. Sure are. I mean, it's just as good as the stock market. Could be even better in some years, a lot of years. Yeah, I've got investment in barrels myself, so yeah, and I get calls all the time wanting to buy barrels and ask me about them. Is it a good investment? I said, well, I think it's probably better than the stock market. Stock market, you never know when it's going to go down. But of course, I know the bourbon business has been kind of slow, and the prices have come down somewhat. But still, I think it's still a good investment. It's just another avenue to put your money in a safer spot.
Have we reached peak bourbon yet?
For who? Jackson Purchase? Or?
Industry-wide.
Oh. I think it's a slowdown, which I've been in the business for almost 40 years. I think I call this normal, 5 days a week. You know, everybody's running still pretty steady. I went through this back in the late 80s and saw the slowdown then, and people shut down for 3 or 4 or 5 months at a time, even a year. One distillery shut down for a year and a half. One of the major distilleries did, and he's even talking about selling it at one time, but then it finally bounced back, and people started expanding, running 7 days a week, running 45, 46 weeks out of the year, and it took off, I guess, in the late 90s, and it's been really a boom. So right now, I think it's just something that's back to what I consider normal, since I've been around for almost 40 years doing this. I don't have any fear. I think you got to make some adjustments in the distillery. You got to look at your workforce, make sure you're not overloaded with people, and if you have to, you know, make some adjustments to your equipment. If you got to cut back a little bit. That's what we did. We cut back a little bit, made some minor adjustments at Jackson Purchase. We don't have an initial big investment like maybe some people do. We're not most fanciest distillery in the world. All we concentrate on making good bourbon. We don't have visitor centers. We're not trying to sell T-shirts and hats. We're not trying to sell. We're not trying to make. We're not building restaurants. All we did was concentrate on making good bourbon. We don't have driveways on all blacktop or concrete, but it's a nice facility. And we did a lot of that work ourselves, and we did a lot of in-house engineering ourselves. Me and Terry did, and so we saved a lot of money. We didn't go out and buy hundreds of acres. We just bought just enough acreage that we felt like to make our operation all be efficient and run.
In a couple of weeks, you're going to join the Bourbon Hall of Fame. What's that mean to you?
Well, it's a great honor. It's a great honor to be recognized at the Bourbon Hall of Fame. It's a great honor. It goes back to my grandfather. He was in the Hall of Fame. My father was in the Hall of Fame. So I'm just carrying on the Beam tradition. And so, yeah, it's a great honor.
I think this makes you the first third-generation member of the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah, well, I never thought of it that way, but you're probably right. Yeah, right. Yeah, my family, yeah, third generation, yeah.
Because there's a lot of fathers and sons, but there's no grandsons in there yet.
Right, yeah, that's true. That's true.
What do you think your dad would say if he saw the initiation?
I think he would be real pleased.
I'll have my tasting notes for Craig's debut release of Jackson Purchased Bourbon in a few minutes. Kenny Coleman and Ryan Cecil of Pursuit Spirits opened their tasting room on Louisville's Whiskey Row a couple of weeks ago, complete with a studio for their Bourbon Pursuit podcast. I talked with Kenny at the Pursuit tent.
So how does it feel to actually have a distillery built around a podcast studio?
You wouldn't know that part yet, right? It's crazy though. It's amazing to kind of just see that like I said before we started rolling here, it's like, you helped pave the path for everything that we did, and we've been very fortunate that we took the podcast and found an audience and was able to kind of build something around it. And we always say that we stand on the shoulders of giants around here, because it's not just the podcast that made it happen. It's because we had great industry guests that came on, and that's what made fans truly interested in listening to us. And it was just a series of doors opening, never saying no to opportunities, and figuring out what was going to be next. And so it led from creating the podcast to creating a barrel picking club to starting our own brand, and then now opening a new spot on Whiskey Row in downtown Louisville. And it's been wild, to kind of say the least, and to think it's been 10 years now since we had started the show. And now we've got even a bigger road ahead of us now that we've dug ourselves a nice little chunk of change in the hole here.
How is the business going?
Business is actually going really well. I know that every time you read Mark Brown's newsletter in the morning, you feel like you're gonna, get kicked in the, in the gut. But as a small brand, we're pretty insulated from it. We're not trying to reach, a very generalized consumer. We're not trying to reach the ones that are switching over to THC seltzers. Like we speak to bourbon enthusiasts and whiskey geeks, and so as doing that, we're able to find a more niche audience. So our scale point is still going to be very infinitely smaller compared to a lot of the big guys out there. So by doing that, the brand has been able to actually do pretty well. We're up over 25% this year than we were next year, and we're going to keep moving in that pace because we're still only in 12 markets. So we've got a lot more states and potentially the rest of the world to still go to.
What's your latest release?
So we started a new thing. We started something called P Club. So P Club is a direct-to-consumer, kind of like a wine club sort of membership where anybody can join. It's $150 a month, and we can get 2 bottles a month, a quarter, directly to your door, but you have the opportunity to pick and choose exactly what you want. But as a part of doing that, there was two selfish ways of doing that. One is, we can also guarantee a little bit of an annual recurring revenue, right? We can actually have a little bit of that subscriber. But two is allows us to start innovating, because right now as a small brand, if we come out with a new product, distributors don't want to take it on. They want you to keep hitting the core SKUs, but we want to keep doing things. But as part of P Club, we can keep innovating, creating new things. So the next one we're coming out with next month is our Kadoma Mizunara finished bourbon. And so we are working again with Mizunara. It feels like Mizunara is like the hot wood of the year. I promise we were working on it for a year before we announced it, but it just happened to be there. So we started off using Mizunara oak. tasted it, and Mizunara just kind of has a very delicate sandalwood kind of profile to it. And we said, in true Pursuit fashion, how can we be different? So we looked at some of the other staves we were using as part of our double oak program and brought that in. So we actually use a high vanilla toasted stave to actually be a part of it. So we blend those two together to actually have a new Mizunara finished whiskey for us.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, we'll send you a sample.
How is the question I've been asking a lot of people this weekend is, have we reached peak bourbon yet?
I think peak bourbon has already been reached, and the market is kind of the indicator of that. I know that friends that I got into this with 5-10 years ago have already kind of moved on to the next thing, or nobody's buying near as much as they have. So I think peak bourbon has probably hit there. Now we've just got to try to figure out, how do we not grow 10 to 15% a year? How do we grow 1 to 2%? I think that's really the healthy margin of where we have to be. And knowing that there's all kinds of things that are outside forces happening. Obviously, THC legalization is one outside force. You have the more of a temperance movement of, clean eating, clean not drinking and stuff like that, and a lot of that coming to light. But as an industry, we have to kind of rally around and figure out, well, how do we keep finding our people and finding new ways that we can reach these consumers and helping them find the brown whiskey category, because there's so much history and Americana and great flavor into it that it's still an opportunity to start introducing it to more people as we continue to go here too.
Earlier this year, Dr. Blake Layfield was named Master Distiller at Maker's Mark. His first major release is this year's cellar-aged collection bourbon, and it gave us a chance to talk with him for the first time.
Tell me about this year's cellar aged. What makes it different from the previous 2 years' versions?
Yeah, so we started Maker's Mark Cellar Aged in 2023 with the inaugural release, and this is the 2025 release, and this features some of the oldest whiskeys to ever come from our distillery. This year's particular blend is a blend of 11, 13, and 14-year-old whiskeys. Like always, cast strength, uncut, unfiltered, and every year we look to showcase what the cellar can mean for maturation, and we change the flavor profile. And this year is a really beautiful flavor. It's really robust with caramelized sugar and ripe dark cherries on the top, a really nice creamy fudge middle palate, and really coats your tongue quite nicely. On the back end, you get our signature holiday spice type of finish, but almost kind of like a baked apple pie type of finish. It's really quite a beautiful spirit.
The traditional Maker's Mark is aged about 5 years and 9 months or so.
It's aged between 6 and 8 years. We don't dump a barrel below 6 years of age.
Okay. I'm just going off what Pickerel told me years ago. So
things might have changed a little bit since this time.
Okay, so 6 to 8 years old, but I've tasted older Maker's Mark since then, and it tasted really woody. And what do you do with cellar age to keep it from going woody?
Yeah, so in a traditional warehouse aged between 6 and 8 years, that is our age to taste standard for Maker's Mark. And we always like to tell people that age is not an indicator of quality. It gives context and dimension, but older does not mean better. I like to think about it like I think of people. You probably know some people that are quite old, but that are quite immature. As it gets older in a traditional warehouse in virgin, new charred barrels, the oak can really start to take over a certain period of time. And that's going to depend on the distillery, your mash bill, your entry proof. For us, we rotate our barrels, but how you manage your inventory. And for us, over about 8.5 years, you start to lose that harmony and balance of flavors where it smells really nice, but as you taste it, it starts to get tannic, oaky, astringent, and bitter. And those are all flavors that you have to work to like. You have to acclimate your palate to astringency and bitterness, and that's not something that our founders wanted in their taste vision. They wanted Maker's Mark to be warm, inviting, pleasant, something that you didn't have to work to like. And after 8.5 years, it gets that, as you mentioned, a little woody and over-oaked and quite singular in flavor, and that's not what we're looking for. That's why we never did it before. But what the cellar does is it has a very different maturation environment. Our traditional warehouses, where we normally age Maker's Mark, between 0 and 40 degrees Celsius, so you get a pretty wide range of temperatures. But in the cellar, it's 10 degrees Celsius or less. So it's a much cooler environment, and it takes away those additive reactions from the cask. That ability for the cask to add in tannins is slowed dramatically. However, core, oxidation is still occurring quite rapidly. So those oxidation gives you caramelization reactions, and it changes some of those esters and aldehydes that mellows the spirit, so you get complexity and richness and depth, but without the tannic overload.
We have not had the chance to talk since you got promoted to Master Distiller. Tell us about your background.
Sure. So I'm from North Carolina. I went to NC State University, Go Pack, where I got a PhD in food science and really learned about flavor there, how flavor can be built from the ground up, the chemistry, the microbiology, the engineering, all the way through that sensory experience. From NC State, I went to Diageo, and I learned how to make vodka, rum, whiskey, beer, you name it. My teams and I have probably made it. And from there, I joined Suntory Spirits, where I've led teams in global R&D, research and development, global quality, before landing at Maker's Mark as Master Distiller and Head of Innovation, where my team and I get to make new products, new experiences every day.
What's the most fun part of the job?
I think connecting with the people that are so passionate about bourbon. We've got fans all over the world. They love the history, the heritage, the culture of bourbon. They love our products, the whiskey quality itself. They also love our purpose, our higher purpose statements. We're a public benefit company. We're certified for regenerative agriculture. All of those elements really work all around the world, and people really engage with our brand, and I think that's so exciting to be part of that.
Did you bring any of the Star Hill Farm whiskey with you this year?
I did not bring any to KBF, no, but if you go to Bourbon and Beyond, I will have some Star Hill Farm whiskey there.
Tell me about that one, because that's a complete departure for Maker's Mark.
Yes, it is the first time since 1953 that we've ever made a new mash bill. And how that came to be is, within the bourbon context, we are a wheated bourbon. Our mash bill is 70% corn, 16% soft red winter wheat, and 14% malted barley. Most bourbons are made with rye, so it gives a really different flavor profile. So our founder, Rob Samuels, he asked a really compelling question, which is, how do we really showcase what wheat is bringing to the equation? And that led us to create our first ever new mash bill. And that was 70% wheat and 30% malted barley. And if you remember what I just said, our mash bill is a Maker's Mark, we just took all the corn out, focusing on those flavoring grains. And then he asked another really compelling question, which is, how do you know you've gone too far unless you go far enough? And that led us to create our second new mash bill, which is 100% malted wheat. So Star Hill Farm is a blend of those two mash bills going into 5 different barrel types. Our control Maker's Mark barrel and 4 experimental barrels, aged between 7 and 8 years. It is uncut and unfiltered at cask strength.
And available pretty much only at the distillery, right?
You can sometimes find it at the distillery. It was available in very limited quantities nationwide, and it retailed for about $100.
A good price for a good whiskey.
I would say so, and you can expect it to come out every year. It will be an annual release. We will change the blend, but also you'll start to see us look at the impact of grain varietals and terroir and ultimately regenerative practices and how that can influence the whiskey. So we've got a long road of storytelling ahead of us for Star Hill Farm.
That's Maker's Mark Master Distiller Dr. Blake Layfield, and this is Whiskey Cast in Depth, brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey.
Our story begins in the wilds of County Wicklow, the Garden of Ireland, a place where nature moves slowly and meaningfully. Some whiskies blend in. Glendalough Double Barrel stands apart. I'm Rowdy Rooney, head distiller here at Glendalough, and I personally oversee our whiskey making process from start to finish. We do things slowly, and we do them right. We start with a smooth, single-grain Irish whiskey. We age it in flame-charred American oak for soft vanilla and a honeyed depth. Then we finish it in Oloroso casks from a small bodega in Spain. Casks we season and ship ourselves to make sure the wood is still alive with character when it arrives. That kind of care gives Glendalough Double Barrel its rich layers of dried fruit, warm spice and signature smoothness. This is a whiskey at its own pace, and it's worth every second. This is Glendalough Double Barrel, crafted to stand apart.
Let's start off the What I'm Tasting This Week department with the Heaven Hill Master Distillers Unity release that celebrates the opening of Heaven Hill Springs Distillery. It includes the final barrel of pre-fire whiskey made by Parker Beam at the original distillery, along with younger bourbons made by former master distiller Denny Potter and current master distiller Connor O'Driscoll. It's bottled at 53.5% ABV, and the nose has notes of caramel, apricots, cherries, honey, and charred oak. The taste is spicy with black pepper and allspice balanced by apricots, cherries, and oak tannins, and the finish is long with charred oak and lingering spices. It's excellent. I'm scoring the Heaven Hill Master Distillers Unity Bourbon a 94. Next up, the Maker's Mark 2025 Cellar Aged Bourbon. As we heard from Blake Layfield, it includes whiskeys ranging from 11 to 14 years old and is bottled at 56.45% ABV. The nose has touches of dried fruits, cherries, caramel, wheat bread, honey, and vanilla. The taste is chewy and thick with a slow onset of baking spices, complemented by brown sugar and black cherries, while the finish is long with a touch of apple pie with cinnamon. I'm scoring the Maker's Mark 2025 Cellar Aged Bourbon a 94. Craig Beam's debut Jackson Purchase Bourbon is 4 years old and bottled at 58.9% ABV. The nose has a nice sweetness with caramel, honeycomb, brown sugar, and toasted oak. The taste has a good balance of sweetness and spice with honey and brown sugar, complemented nicely by baking spices, and the finish is long and sweet. It's an excellent debut for the new Hall of Famer, and I'm scoring the Jackson Purchase Bourbon a 93. Finally, master distiller Jacob Call makes the Hemingway line of whiskeys, and he's just added a new bourbon to the original rye whiskey. It's bottled at 49% ABV, and the nose has touches of caramel, dried fruits, and brown sugar. The taste is chewy and thick with charred oak, white pepper, honey, brown sugar, and vanilla. The finish is long with brown sugar and a touch of oak, and I'm scoring the Hemingway Bourbon a 92. Those are just a few of the whiskeys I tasted this weekend during the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, and I'll be adding them to our searchable list of more than 3,900 different whiskeys from all over the world. Check it out this week at whiskycast.com.
Throughout the years, Dewar's has created some incredible whiskeys, but our new Dewar's 12-year-old, that one's a personal favorite. It's the kind of scotch that earns praise from the pros, but still feels right at home in the middle of a good night with friends. Every pour opens up with notes of vanilla, toffee, baking spice, and a smooth oak finish. It's rich, it's approachable, and it has a way of bringing people together. Whether it's around the table, the fireplace, or just wherever the night happens to take you. Look, the glasses may hold the whiskey, but the whiskey, that's what holds the moment. Please enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Dewar's is a trademark. Imported by John Dewar & Sons Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Blended Scotch whiskey, 40% alcohol by volume.
Let's open up the inbox now and see what people are talking about this week in our community segment. Had a lot of reaction to last week's archive interview with the legendary Jim McEwen, like this comment on Facebook from T. Cronin Moore. Such a great, talented, knowledgeable, entertaining master of his field. And from longtime brand ambassador Colin Dunn on Instagram, Jim was and still is a great inspiration to me, especially in my early days with Bowmore. Now, there was some objection to the black and white photo of Jim that I used on the website and in our social media posts. I used it because I thought it was the best photo I had of Jim in my files. But from Barman Departamento on Instagram, you scared me shitless with this black and white picture of Jim. I thought the guy had died. And from Whiskey Oracle on Instagram, Mark, I didn't recognize you during that playback. Thought it was someone else doing the interview. No, it was me, albeit with a different recording setup than what I use today. If you have a comment, question, or suggestion, or anything else you'd like to share with whiskey lovers around the world, download the free WhiskeyCast community app and join the conversation. You can also find us on social media. Look for WhiskeyCast on Blue Sky, Threads, X, Facebook, and Instagram. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com. I need to pass along some thank yous to the folks who helped make this weekend's coverage of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival possible. First off, thank you to the festival staff and volunteers, especially PR coordinator Tracy Green. Heaven Hill provided production assistance, along with the Hotel Bourbon in Louisville. Check them out the next time you visit Louisville. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. Imagine a 2-grain bourbon. That's the latest creation of Angel's Envy master distiller Owen Martin, along with a peated rye. The distillery exclusive bottlings are a follow-up to last year's Bottled in Bond release, and the 2-grain was the result of a happy accident at the distillery.
The start of these picks up at the end of our last one. So we did our Bottle and Bond distillery-only release last summer, 2 Junes ago, and it was very well received, and we're actually scaling that up to be a national release now. But that was kind of in my mind. I view that as a very successful release. How do you follow that up? My background's in Scotch, and I had played around with some peated casks at Stranahan, so it was something I was playing around with here, and I was frankly kind of making that whiskey for me. But I also realized that probably wouldn't be the best way to follow up a Bottle and Bond, very classic bourbon profile, with something that's going to be very loved or hated, especially in Kentucky. And so that kind of kicked off the idea of maybe we should be doing a double release. And I love a double release because not only can I talk about all the craftsmanship behind each whiskey, but there's almost a whole third set of talking points beyond the 2 whiskeys where I can then talk about how they compare and contrast with each other. And that's where this ball kind of started rolling. So obviously the peated cast from Isla, we got them via the Doers team, which was awesome. So I was thinking about what would be a really compelling thing to compare and contrast with that. And I was looking through our inventories. I have a big old spreadsheet of all the different grain-based thing, all the different fermentations, both put down before I got there and since I've been there. And there was one line that just said high corn bourbon. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. What is that? And kind of dug into our production logs. And back in 2019, there was a snafu. Like a lot of innovations, the root of those sometimes isn't intentional. And so, we have a corn silo, a rye silo, and a malt silo. And when the night distiller accidentally puts corn in the rye silo, you get, in our case, 72% corn, which is our base grain. And instead of 18% rye, as we normally do day in, day out, it becomes 18% more corn and 10% malt. So basically this was a 90% corn, 10% malt bourbon. And so, I kind of looked around. I was like, oh, that's okay. We can do something with this. I pulled some samples. I thought it was really good. So I kind of rebranded that as a 2-grain bourbon, one with no small grain, no, not wheated, not high rye, just nothing at all. And I thought that could be a good counterpoint. So, 90% corn, I think a lot of people would think this might be overly sweet or cloying. And really it's not. It's bready. It's nutty. And I think the most unique thing about it is just how oily and viscous and velvety the mouthfeel is, that corn content. And so to me, then I was like, okay, I got the peated on one hand. I got this 90% local corn from Shelby County, right by us. And as I looked into it, it's all Kelvin Cooperage barrels, so, all made in Louisville. And so I was like, hey, local. And then I actually looked, and what we did was we partnered with Louisville Water Company, very historic water company, over 150 years old. And we did the final cut with their Louisville Pure Tap water. So kind of hit local across the board. What we found as we went along with it was that corn content, although it made a very unique bourbon, our barrel exit proof was initially 123 proof. But when we were looking at cutting it, it didn't take water well at all. It went completely flat, lost all the uniqueness of that velvety mouthfeel. And so I kind of reached into my craft whiskey, my craft whiskey book, and I found the idea that I wanted to probably slow proof it, or at least try that. So back in March of this year, we tasted through the 84 candidate barrels, picked the 50 we liked the best, and we married those together. And we actually put a cut on it at that point, and we cut it down to 116 proof and then recast it right back into the barrels it came out of. So not a true finish because it's back into the same barrels. They just were disgorged. And in that way, we were able to basically, especially through the summer months, marry it at a lower proof. And I thought that really mellowed it nicely and maintained the integrity of the body of that whiskey that we worked hard to get to. And then in contrast to that, the peated is a 6.5-year-old Kentucky rye as the base. About half of it spent a year in Isla Scotch barrels. The other half we kept writing. But because we had used a little craft technique to cut the 2-grain, I was thinking about what we could do with the peated. And we looked at cognac, actually, and took a technique out of cognac industry called Petit O, or little water, kind of similar to like a devil's cut in American terms. And we basically emptied the rye barrels, and we filled them with a small amount of water, 2 or 3 gallons. And this was also a little bit inadvertent, but ended up going 10 months of barrel aging that. And when we dumped that, it ended up being 30% ABV. And so we put the first cut on the peated rye with that 30% ABV little water. And that little water added this crazy, like creamy custard, like lemon tart character that I thought really actually softened the aggressiveness of the peat and really integrated it nicely into the base whiskey and allowed that to be like this very rounded, cohesive launch. So anyway, you can see across the board we got local on the 2 grain. We got obviously international casks on the peated, but also international technique in like finishing as a technique rather than a barrel. And I think it's just a really fun double release. Obviously very hands-on, high-touch, craft focus. It's only 20 barrels ended up for the peated. I think we have 43 for the 2 grain. So it'll be distillery only as of today. Should be on the shelf. We're hoping for the better part of the next year, but when they're gone, they're gone. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, honestly, I didn't even necessarily want to bring the peated down to Kentucky Bourbon Festival. I was thinking, read the room, like, play to your audience. The 2 grain's going to be a hit. Peated maybe not so much. But we've got a really good reception so far today. So it's been, I think people will be pleasantly surprised by it, even those that don't love Scotch and don't love peat. So, but yeah, so far so good.
I'll have my tasting notes for the Angel's Envy Peated Rye finish soon at whiskeycast.com. And if there's something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just get in touch with us. That's all for this episode of WhiskeyCast from the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskeycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, and a complete archive of past episodes going all the way back to 2005. Get in touch with us, download the free WhiskeyCast community app from your app store, or find us on social media. We're on Blue Sky, Threads, X, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskeyCast, and our email address is comments@whiskeycast.com.
There's something special about opening a bottle of Dewar's 12 Year with the people who matter most. It brings out the stories, the laughter, and the kind of moments you don't plan, but never forget. Built on tradition, made for right now, and best when shared. Dewar's 12-year-old.
Crafted with time, shaped by nature, perfected by generations. From Yamazaki to Hibiki to Hakushu, every drop of House of Suntory whiskey is a reflection of where it comes from. House of Suntory. This is Japanese whiskey.
Enjoy responsibly. Suntory Whiskey Single Malt and Blended Japanese Whiskey. 43% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2025 Suntory Global Spirits Import Company, Chicago, Illinois.
WhiskeyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2025, and usually comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. But this weekend we're coming to you from the bourbon capital of the world, Bardstown, Kentucky. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.